The first time I met him, he was standing in front of our data visualization wall, like it was some kind of art gallery, nodding like he understood a single packet crawling across that screen. He tilted his head, squinted like he was studying a Picasso, then turned to the room and said, "We need to turn this into a story, a compelling narrative. Numbers without context are just noise." Everyone nodded along. I didn't. I just made a mental note. We'd hired a peacock to do an engineer's job. My name's Brian Walsh. I'm 53 years old, and I've been building the guts of this company's infrastructure for the past 15 years. Started when we were still renting server space by the hour and using Excel sheets as our primary database. I've outlasted 6 CTOs, survived 4 different ownership changes, and trained a dozen junior engineers who now work for companies that poach our talent. I don't care much for office politics, company happy hours, or explaining to someone with an MBA why server uptime isn't negotiable. I care that our systems work, period. Patrick Stone introduced himself with a handshake like a wet fish and a smile that screamed, "Trust me, I'm management." Called himself the new VP of Operations, said he was here to optimize workflows and eliminate redundancies. I caught a whiff of expensive cologne mixed with that particular brand of confidence that comes from never having fixed anything that actually matters. He wore this practiced grin like he was auditioning for a corporate training video nobody would ever watch. I watched him scan the room, marketing, sales, business development, and then his eyes landed on us. The engineering team, the infrastructure guys, the people who keep the lights on while everyone else sleeps. "We'll need to do a comprehensive audit of your processes," he said, waving his hand like he was blessing us. Efficiency is the name of the game. I wanted to ask if breaking things was his middle name, but I kept my mouth shut. See, I've been at this long enough to recognize the type. Patrick didn't care about the foundation. He cared about the facade. On his second day, he made his rounds like some kind of corporate ambassador, tossing compliments around like confetti. "Love the energy in here. This team really gets it. We're going to streamline some paradigms, folks." His words evaporated the moment they hit the air, like cheap aftershave. When he reached my corner of the floor, the part without the mood lighting and ergonomic furniture, he squinted at the network topology diagram I had up on my monitor. "And this is—" "What exactly?" he asked. "Live system status," I said without turning around. "Core routing overlay plus active load balancing for the primary data flow." He held up his hands like I'd started speaking in code. "Whoa there, you're going to have to dumb that down for me. I don't speak engineer." He laughed at his own joke. Nobody else did. That's when I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Patrick didn't understand what he didn't understand, and worse, he thought that was charming. He looked around the room, still grinning like we were all supposed to be impressed by his humility. "You know," he said, pointing at my screen, "we need to translate this kind of stuff for the broader organization. Make it digestible, make it sexy." I finally looked at him. "You're talking about infrastructure." "Exactly," he said, completely missing the sarcasm. "Infrastructure should inspire confidence, not confusion." That's when I saw it, that little twitch in his smile when he realized I wasn't going to play along, the slight narrowing of his eyes. From that moment on, I knew what I was to him, an obstacle to work around. The problem was, Patrick thought the blinking lights in our server room were just decoration. He thought our monthly disaster recovery reports were optional reading. He thought cloud-based meant it was someone else's problem. And worst of all, he assumed I was just another technical grunt with no business sense and no leverage. That week, he canceled our quarterly disaster simulation drill because it sounded alarmist. Standing in front of the whole team, he actually said, "Come on, do we really think the entire system would fail at once? That's like planning for a meteor strike." Nobody laughed, but I watched Stephen Miller squeeze his coffee cup so hard the plastic buckled. Rachel Davis was blinking rapidly like she'd just walked into a bright light. We were all thinking the same thing. This guy's going to break something, and we'll be the ones who get blamed. I kept my face neutral, nodded when required, even clapped politely when he ended the meeting with his trademark, "Let's disrupt the status quo." But privately, I started going through our recovery protocols with a fine-tooth comb. I made backups of backups, double-checked access controls, logged every single change he made, even the ones he pushed through his assistants, because here's the thing. I've seen guys like Patrick before. They come in loud, rearrange the furniture, cut the wrong corners, and disappear right before everything falls apart. And when it does, they blame the architect. So I built myself some insurance, quietly, cleanly, without any fanfare. It wasn't revenge, it was preparation. The memo arrived at 7:23 a.m. on a Tuesday. Subject line: Infrastructure Streamlining Initiative, Immediate Cost Optimization. It was one of those PDFs that practically smelled like management consulting. Lots of colorful charts, buzzword-heavy bullet points, and graphs with conveniently missing axis labels. Page 3 was where the knife went in. Phase out secondary. UPS backup systems in data center B. Primary power supply has maintained 98.5% uptime for 36 plus months. ROI analysis indicates redundancy expenditure not justified by risk probability. I stared at that sentence until my coffee went stone cold. He was cutting our backup power systems. Let me be crystal clear about something. Those weren't luxury items. They weren't nice-to-haves like standing desks or free coffee. They were there because 3 years ago, a squirrel got into a utility transformer and half the grid hiccuped for about 20 minutes. Our system stayed up. Not because we got lucky, but because we planned for exactly that scenario. Patrick didn't know that story because he'd never asked. Later that morning, during what he called a collaborative discussion, but felt more like an ambush, he smiled and said, "Look, if the Titanic had better cost controls, they might have skipped some of those extra lifeboats. Think of the savings potential." The room laughed nervously. I didn't. "Actually," I said without looking up from my notes, "the Titanic didn't have enough lifeboats. That was the problem." "Exactly," he chirped, completely missing the point. "Different era. Modern systems don't need all this redundancy. We've got SLAs, cloud autoscaling, mirrored drives." He trailed off, probably realizing he didn't actually know what any of those words meant when you put them together. Like a kid repeating grown-up phrases. That same week, he rejected my quarterly security audit request, called it overkill and fear-based thinking. Said we were wasting valuable developer hours testing edge case vulnerabilities. His exact words: "You think hackers care about us? We're not Google. We're not sexy enough to attack." Rachel turned to me afterward and whispered, "Should we send out invitations to ransomware groups? Save them the trouble of finding us." I started documenting everything, not just system logs, everything. Every email where he ignored our warnings, every Slack message where he brushed off our concerns, every budget cut he approved without consulting the architecture team. I built a folder on an encrypted drive, mirrored to a cold storage device in my desk drawer, called it compliance reference, but in my head I named it the insurance policy, because I could see the cascade starting, even if Patrick couldn't hear the warning bells. He approved a CI/CD pipeline update that broke container versioning, eliminated our daily system rollbacks to reduce server churn, forwarded a phishing email to accounting because he thought it was a legitimate invoice. I spent my evenings fixing his mistakes like a janitor cleaning up after a parade of toddlers. Patrick sent out a company-wide email celebrating a 3% reduction in infrastructure costs, called it optimization in action. Meanwhile, our response times were crawling, support tickets were piling up, and the overnight dev team was complaining about random access failures. Patrick called it a permissions glitch. I knew it was entropy, systemic breakdown caused by removing the safeguards. Then he started pushing for what he called a visual modernization of our admin dashboard. Said it looked too clinical, wanted animated charts, bright colors, something, with visual appeal. Stephen asked him point blank, "Do you want it to be functional, or do you want it to be pretty?" Patrick said, "Why not both?" Because it wasn't a toy. This was the control center for a $180 million infrastructure management system. That's when I stopped trying to change his mind. You can't argue with a peacock about structural engineering. I updated our disaster recovery protocol that night. Didn't change much, just moved the encryption keys into a separate escrow clause that triggers when a senior executive voids critical infrastructure redundancy without engineering consensus. Legal signed off automatically. It looked like standard compliance language, just another boring line in a document nobody reads. But it meant one thing. When the ship starts sinking, I control access to the lifeboats. He booked the conference room under infrastructure pulse check, which sounded innocent enough. I walked in expecting another pep talk about synergy and came face with what was basically a firing squad in business casual. Patrick sat at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up, coffee in one hand, smugness in the other. Around him were Jeffrey Cooper from Junior Development, Anthony Clark from DevOps Analysis, and Linda Parker from HR, the one who says just trying to maintain a positive culture right before she flags someone for attitude issues. "Let's keep this casual," Patrick started, flipping through a thin folder with my name on it. "Just want to get a sense of where we're at, what's working, what's maybe a little outdated." I didn't sit down, leaned against the doorframe with my arms crossed, watching him fumble through his rehearsed charm routine. He started with the usual theater, a few shallow compliments about team productivity, a nod to the server migration we'd pulled off 8 months earlier without a minute of downtime. Then he pivoted. "But one thing I've been hearing," he said, stretching the words like he was doing us all a favor, "is that we might be over-allocating technical resources in some areas, maybe holding on to outdated protocols, maybe being a little too conservative." He glanced at me like we were sharing some inside joke. We weren't. "Brian, you've been with the company. What, 15 years?" 15 years, I confirmed. 6 CTOs, 5 different compliance frameworks, 2 physical relocations, 0 security breaches under my watch. He nodded with mock appreciation. "Right, which is incredible. Really impressive. But sometimes those long tenures come with a certain rigidity, a reluctance to embrace change." He smiled at the junior guys and added, "Like, we're still running our own certificate authority for internal service authentication. Isn't that a little old school?" I stared at him without blinking. "It's also the reason your platform hasn't been compromised by a 5-line script that any teenager could download." Linda shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Jeffrey looked down at his laptop like he was ashamed to be breathing the same air. Patrick laughed. "See, that passion? I love it. But passion needs balance. And honestly, Brian, when I look at your salary compared to output metrics," he let that hang in the air like a threat. There it was. The real agenda. He wasn't evaluating performance. He was building a narrative he could use when the layoffs came. I walked out before he finished talking. Didn't slam the door, didn't mutter a word under my breath. Just left. Back at my desk, I opened the secure drive and found the document I'd prepared months earlier. Buried deep in a compliance update from our SOC2 certification renewal was an obscure clause about authorization escrow, meant for use only in cases of technical reorganization or critical role reassignment. It allowed me to trigger a fail-safe protocol that moved root access keys into legal custody, froze administrative pathways, could only be reversed by majority board vote or CISO override. And Patrick wasn't the CISO. He probably didn't even know what those letters stood for. I executed the script quietly, took about 8 seconds. No alerts, no pop-ups, just a deep system event logged under a routine maintenance task labeled Certificate Rotation Daemon, scheduled. Then I sent one email to legal, policy activation, access custody transfer. No commentary, no explanation. They replied 6 minutes later, received and acknowledged, secure escrow engaged, custody chain recorded. I stared at that response like it was oxygen. It wasn't just legal jargon, it was leverage. My architecture, my system, was now running under access keys that nobody could touch without explicit board approval. When it broke, and it would, nobody could fix it without me. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty, like I'd just buried something that used to matter to me. I'd spent months trying to meet Patrick halfway, softened my tone in emails, simplified technical language, rewrote the same, warning memos 6 different ways, hoping one version would penetrate his skull. None of it mattered, so I stopped hoping and started preparing. The joke hit the room like a physical slap. All this just to look pretty? My daughter's Nightlight does more. We were standing in the main server room, not a flashy space, just climate-controlled efficiency with blue cables and the constant whisper of machines doing work Patrick would never understand. This was the nervous system of everything we'd built, and he was comparing it to a $12 plug-in from Walmart. I was sitting about 10 feet away, laptop open, running diagnostics on packet flow patterns, monitoring for anomalies in a system I'd designed to be invisible until you absolutely needed it. And here was this grinning amateur waving his ignorance around like it was charming. The room went dead silent. Not just quiet, silent. Like someone had sucked all the air out of the space. Rachel stopped typing mid-keystroke, her fingers frozen above the keyboard. Jeffrey's chair stopped squeaking as he went completely still. Stephen looked up from his terminal with an expression I'd never seen before. Part disbelief, part horror, like he'd just watched someone spit on a flag. Even Anthony from DevOps, who usually kept his head down and his mouth shut, was staring at Patrick with something approaching disgust. The only sound was the low hum of servers and the barely audible whisper of air conditioning. Patrick kept talking, completely oblivious to the atmosphere. Something about aesthetics, something about how technology should inspire confidence, and nobody's impressed by blinking lights anymore. But nobody was listening. Every engineer in that room understood exactly what he'd just done. He'd compared 15 years of my work, systems that had kept this company alive through power outages, network attacks, hardware failures, and every other disaster you could imagine, to a child's toy. I closed my laptop. Wasn't dramatic, no theatrical slam. Just the soft click of the lid settling shut. But in that silence, the sound carried like a gunshot. Everyone heard it. Everyone understood what it meant. I stood slowly, deliberately. Took one last look at the server rack. My rack. 4 years of modular design, custom automation scripts, failover nodes hand-tuned to prevent latency drift. 100 invisible redundancies that had saved this company more money than Patrick would see in his entire career, without so much as a thank you email. But to Patrick, it was just furniture taking up valuable real estate. He finally noticed something was wrong. The silence had weight now, pressing down on everyone in the room. He looked around like we were being unreasonable. What? I'm just saying we could rethink the layout. Maybe add some LED accent lighting. Make it pop. Stephen exhaled through his nose. Not a laugh, just the sound of a man watching something sacred get desecrated. I slipped my badge into my jacket pocket. The gesture was small, but in a room full of engineers who understood systems and protocols, it might as well have been a resignation letter written in neon. "Where are you headed?" Patrick asked, his tone shifting slightly. Still casual, but there was something underneath now. A flicker of uncertainty. "Grabbing lunch?" "Lunch," I said, my voice flat and professional. "And after that, we'll see." He nodded, but the easy confidence was cracking. He turned to the others, trying to reclaim control of the room. "Okay, so let's talk about powering down that secondary node cluster. If we can get that offline by end of week, we're looking at immediate cost savings." Rachel tried to interrupt, her voice strained. "Patrick, that's not decorative equipment. That's our failover." "It's redundant," he cut her off with a wave. "We've been over this. Lean operations mean clean operations." He had no idea what he'd just done, but everyone else in that room knew. Because I wasn't going to stop him, not anymore. I wasn't going to send another email he wouldn't read, write another memo he'd dismiss, or explain another concept he'd never understand. I walked out of the server room, past Linda from HR, who gave me a nervous smile and avoided eye contact, down the hallway with its flickering ceiling panel that maintenance had been promising to fix for 6 months. Past the new intern clutching a folder nobody had asked him to prepare, kept walking until the hum of machinery faded into the sterile white noise of corporate air conditioning. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. When I closed that laptop, I hadn't just paused my work. I'd triggered the final sequence in a cascade I'd designed months ago. A series of passive failsafes, not sabotage, not malice. Just what happens when you remove the human oversight from a system built to require constant care. The authentication tokens were already starting their countdown. Certificate renewal. Processes would begin quietly failing within hours. The heartbeat verification scripts, still running but unevaluated, would start missing their checkpoints by tomorrow. And with the backup nodes already eliminated thanks to Patrick's cost-cutting genius, there wouldn't be a safety net to catch the fall. Nothing explosive would happen immediately. The brilliance of it was in the delay. I'd built the system with guardrails, but Patrick had spent 2 months methodically removing them, thinking they were speed bumps. He didn't realize he'd already loosened every bolt on the roller coaster. He'd called it a nightlight. In about 18 minutes, we'd see exactly how much light it gave off when the power grid started having problems. I didn't submit a 2-week notice, didn't gather the team for some tearful goodbye, or post a LinkedIn update about new opportunities. That's not how you exit a war zone. That's how you get shot in the back. Instead, I printed one page, signed it, and walked it down to legal, Clause 14, C, voluntary separation, triggered by hostile reassignment or public undermining of critical technical role. It wasn't flashy, just a line buried in the weeds of my original employment contract, amended during a compliance review 4 years ago. Nobody remembered it existed except me and the firm's general counsel, who'd personally signed off on it when I flagged the language as standard risk mitigation. It meant one thing: the moment someone in executive leadership publicly delegitimized my position, I could resign immediately, voiding my non-compete and triggering protective severance clauses. Most importantly, it sealed off administrative access to certain recovery systems without violating a single company policy. That daughter's nightlight comment? That was the trigger, the public spectacle, the documented incident that turned my resignation from a career move into a legal shield. Legal didn't argue. They read the form, their eyebrows went up, and they handed me a stamped copy with a look that said, "I hope you know what you're doing." I walked out the same way I'd arrived 15 years earlier. No fanfare, no escort, just a laptop bag and a head full of contingency plans nobody else knew existed. The cascade started with a hiccup. A minor database sync stuttered and tried to retry. Normally, the orchestration layer would catch it, reschedule, and keep everything humming without anyone noticing. But the retry script didn't fire because the orchestration was now blind. 3 minutes later, a routine security certificate hit its expiration window. Should have auto-renewed like always, but renewal required an integrity verification from a heartbeat process that hadn't passed authentication since I revoked the token. The certificate expired. Traffic started failing silently. 6 more minutes. The orchestration layer, now registering false negatives across multiple regions, began pulling emergency recovery routines that depended on cached validation data that had already timed out. The cascade accelerated. Public dashboards stopped refreshing. Mobile apps started throwing 503 errors. Transaction queues backed up 4 seconds, then 9, then 15. Customer support lines lit up like Christmas morning. Someone in marketing posted to company Slack, "Hey, is the client portal down? Getting weird timeout errors." Rachel was first to respond in the engineering channel. "Looking into it now." Steven chimed in, "Seeing stale session data. Might be a routing issue." Then Jeffrey, "This shouldn't be possible. What's wrong with the orchestration layer?" Then silence, because the system wasn't just failing. It was failing perfectly, like dominoes arranged by a master craftsman. The monitoring scripts were intact, the alerting systems still functioned, but the underlying services weren't responding fast enough, which meant warnings got lost in just enough noise to create confusion without clarity. And every failover mechanism that should have caught the cascade, Patrick had eliminated them. "Too much redundancy," he'd said. "Too expensive." 9 more minutes had passed. Total elapsed time, 18 minutes. Back in the office, I could picture the IT floor humming with controlled panic. I knew this because I still had read-only access to the support ticket system through a legacy credential nobody remembered I possessed. Not that I was doing anything with it, just watching the response chain unfold from a coffee shop across town. My phone buzzed. 3 missed calls, all from internal numbers. No voicemails, just escalating desperation. I ignored them. The emails came next. First a tentative, "Are you available?" from Linda. Then, urgent system issues, need input from Steven. Then, full-blown, emergency, logs attached from Rachel. I scanned her message. She was sharp, had already figured out that the orchestration layer was locked out of the recovery daemon. She just didn't know why, couldn't know. I'd never documented that particular safeguard. The CTO finally entered the Slack thread exactly 18 minutes after the first flicker, escalating to level 1, emergency meeting in conference room A. All hands. Patrick, still silent, probably trying to figure out which button to push to make the blinking stop. I sip my coffee and watch the system load metrics, normally smooth and predictable, start looking like a seismograph during an earthquake. Transaction processing was now backing up by 2 minutes, then 4, then 7. Revenue was bleeding in real time. In the back of my mind, I wondered how long it would take them to find the note, because I'd left one. Not dramatic, not bitter. Just a single post-it stuck to the side of my monitor. Yellow paper, black ink, slightly smudged. Recovery keys and legal escrow. Board authorization required for release. I could picture Patrick reading it, blinking, pulse quickening. I could picture the CEO turning slowly toward him. Realization. Dawning like a very cold sunrise. Because here's something nobody told Patrick when he got his shiny VP badge. Authority is easy to claim when the water's calm. But when systems crash and lights go out, people remember who actually knew where the switches were. And I'd built all the switches. My phone rang one more time as I was finishing the last of my coffee. Corporate number, New York area code. I answered because I already knew what this call was going to be. Brian, this is Catherine Wells. We've been watching your work from afar. Professional voice, warm but efficient. We've seen the audit trails, the failover designs, the way you built sustainability into systems without ever needing to use the nuclear option. That's not just engineering, that's discipline. She paused, letting that sink in. We'd like you to bring that kind of discipline here. Senior cloud architect role, full autonomy, your team, your rules, your architecture. I didn't answer right away, just watched people dragging their lives around in wheeled suitcases, kids running in circles, a businessman laughing into his phone about something that probably didn't matter. No interview? I asked. Don't need one. The work speaks for itself, and it speaks in the language we understand. Systems that don't break, customers who don't panic, teams that sleep through the night without getting paged. The kind of quiet you earn when you build things right the first time. The kind of silence that makes weak managers forget you exist until you don't. I'll have my assistant send over the offer, she said. And Brian, don't build anything for us unless we deserve it. I ended the call without saying goodbye. Back at my former company, they were learning what infrastructure really means. Not the pretty parts, not the buzzwords, the foundation that keeps everything else from falling into the ground. Patrick's career lasted about as long as our backup power systems would have during that storm 3 years ago. The difference is, I'd planned for both scenarios. The recovery keys are still in legal escrow, as far as I know. Maybe they figured out how to rebuild everything from scratch. Maybe they hired someone else who knows how to read the documentation I left behind. Or maybe they learned that calling someone's life work a nightlight has consequences that compound over time, like interest on a debt you forgot you owed. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. I'm building something new now, something that deserves to be built right. And this time, the people writing the checks understand the difference between a peacock and an engineer. In the end, respect isn't something you can demand from a PowerPoint slide or mandate through corporate restructuring. It's earned in the quiet moments when systems don't fail, and nobody notices the person who made sure they didn't. The most dangerous thing you can do to someone who's spent decades building something. Invisible is to make them visible, because once they step out of the shadows, you realize just how much darkness they were holding back.